Hi, this is Brian Kim. I'm going to share with you this case of my first experience using the Bausch and Lomb Stellaris Phaco system. Now, as you know, on my channel, I use the Alcon Centurion system, and the differences are the Alcon system is a peristaltic pump system, and the Bausch and Lomb has made a name for themselves in representing the Venturi system. Now, just simply speaking, the peristaltic system uses tubing and rollers, and the rollers push and compress the tubing in such a way that it moves fluid. And so that system works fine. In contrast, the Bausch and Lomb system, the simplest way I can think of it is it uses almost like a piston where you're using pressure and volume and, like the basic physics that we learned in college. It utilizes this piston type concept where you could quickly change volume and pressure, and this is how they're able to leverage this technology and concepts in their Phaco system. So I'm going to go ahead and start the case, but before doing that, let's look at their website. The website says, misconceptions are out and data is in. It's time to leave the status quo and experience the truth about vacuum fluidics innovation. Discover a new level of performance that delivers the control you demand. And so they're trying to say, the peristaltic system has been around for a long time, but maybe there's something to the Venturi system that they advocate, which is in their Stellaris platform. And they also say the chamber stability is a critical factor for successful lens extraction, which of course is true. And they claim through adaptive fluidics, this proactively monitors and responds to the vacuum so that you can do the surgery. Of course, the proof will be in the pudding as I do this case. In addition to chamber stability, one of the core foundations of good phaco technology is cutting efficiency of the lens. And they claim that they have optimized cutting efficiency, attuned energy, which delivers highly efficient cutting and efficient emulsification thanks to mechanical cutting power generated by longitudinal motion combined with an acoustic cavitation technology. And as you know, the competing manufacturers not only have longitudinal energy, but also a side-to-side movement technology, such as torsional or elliptical technology to help emulsify the lens and reduce energy. But Bausch and Lomb is talking about this other technology that makes them more efficient as well. And finally, as you look at this table showing the Stellaris, i.e. Venturi system, and then on the right side, the flow-based technology, with aspiration control, it's direct until you have occlusion, whereas with the flow-based system, it's directed by the surgeon. With vacuum control, it's directly controlled even despite no occlusion. But on the flow-based system, it's indirect, which again, it requires occlusion. And I'm going to put a little asterisk by this point, because with the flow-based system, you need occlusion. You need the tip covered so that you can build vacuum, like when you're sucking on a straw. When you build that negative pressure when you're sucking on the straw, that is all predicated upon occlusion. Whereas in contrast, with the Venturi system, you don't have to have any occlusion to build vacuum. And going back to the next point about building vacuum, again, it's the same thing. It's a linear foot pedal control vacuum that you can deliver instantaneously, they state. Whereas with the flow-based system, it's rather irregular, again, because it's dependent upon occlusion. Again, like my analogy of the straw, you have to have coverage of the straw opening at the bottom of the straw as you're sucking with some type of material. Let's say you're drinking a smoothie and you get a little piece of strawberry occluding the tip. You need that strawberry to occlude the tip in order to build that vacuum. And then finally, rise time. Rise time is really a term unique to the peristaltic pump world. It is really a non-issue with the Venturi system because you don't have to build anything up. There's no rise time involved because there's no building of vacuum, which is predicated upon occlusion, which is, again, is all really concepts about a peristaltic pump system. With the Venturi system, because you're essentially manipulating volume and pressures with this Venturi type system, it's a non-issue. And so let's see in this first case using the Bausch & Lomb Stellaris if I'm able to debunk or confirm their claims on their website. So you can see this eye. This is a really nice big pupil. I'm using the cotton tip to steady the eye, and this is a corneal marker, which will help me to center and size the rhexis. This is not a terribly dense lens, and so We'll just see how this case goes. Again, but this is the very first case that I'm using this Bausch & Lomb Stellaris system. I make my paracentesis incision first on the right side and then the left side, making sure I'm parallel to iris plane, which creates a nice corneal shelf, which will allow me to achieve a self-sealing incision. This is intracameral epinephrine, and then some dispersive viscoelastic to coat the corneal endothelium and to flatten the anterior capsule. And this is a triplanar corneal incision. I make a vertical groove, place the blade into the deep part of the groove, tunnel, and then I enter. And these are the sharp tip Moria microrhexis forceps. I don't have any financial interest. I puncture the center, pull down towards me, grabbing the right side of the tear, going around circumferentially, trying to match the diameter of the rhexis with the corneal mark that I made before. I tend to stay just a little bit smaller than the mark that I made, but you can see excellent control while I'm doing the rhexis with these microrhexis forceps. Finish off the rhexis, burp some viscoelastic out, and coating the cornea with the viscoelastic. And this is the capsule fornix hydrodissection technique. I place a cannula under the rhexis edge, contra-incisionally, do a little wiggle, get a nice wave, lift the lens up, and then decompress the bag, loosening the lens from the capsular bag. Okay, so now we're going to go with the Bausch & Lomb Stellaris system. You're going to see some differences. Immediately you can see there's no overlay. Of course, that's because it's a different system from the microscope. Lifting the incision, going in with irrigation off to minimize Descemet's trauma. I'm starting to remove the surface epinuclear material. Immediately I can see how efficient the removal is. I slide the chopper out under the rhexis edge contra-incisionally, the Phaco tip vertically sub-incisionally, bringing the instruments together, fracturing the lens in half. That's double chop. Sliding the chopper under the right heminucleus, hooking the peripheral lens, and then pulling it centrally, crushing the lens against the Phaco tip, and that is a cross chop. One of the things I immediately notice is when I try to grab pieces, it just comes right out. I didn't have to hook the lens piece around the lens equator with the chopper. I'm able to get much stronger holding power with this machine relative to the machine I've been using this entire time. This is the last quadrant. I do a quick cross-chop maneuver, but essentially the endonucleus has been removed in its entirety rather quickly. So again, really good holding power, really good grabbing of the lens piece. I never felt it slip off, which is a very common thing when you see a peristaltic system. When you lose occlusion, you lose that vacuum. And so you end up having to grab it again. That's really my first impression with this case off the bat. Now this is their disposable IA tip. I'm starting sub-incisionally, peeling from anterior to posterior. With this disposable tip, you can see that the tip is soft. It's slightly angled at about maybe 45 degrees. And I prefer that angled tip when I'm doing cortex removal. And because it's a soft tip, it should be gentle on the capsular bag. And you can see rather easy and efficient removal of the cortex. But one of the things I'm noticing is I like to turn my INA tip and port side to side, and it requires me to roll my handpiece within the incision. But because this material is so flimsy, as I'm trying to turn it, you can see the torquing and twisting of the actual plastic material. And another thing I've noticed is the metal is straight and it doesn't go all the way to the tip. And so you can see the metal portion, it goes right to where the angle of the very tip is, but it doesn't actually support the tip. So what happens is the tip is very, very flimsy and there's not much support there. I've switched to polish mode, and so they already had a polish mode in this system. And it looks pretty good. It does a pretty nice job in polishing under the rexus edge. You can see the lens epithelial cells coming out, but you can see I'm having to constantly adjust with my left hand on the tubing as I'm trying to roll the INA tip side to side, and it's rather annoying. So I don't really prefer this disposable tip. I'm sure there are plenty of people who like it, but for the technique that I use, I like to, again, go around all the way 360 degrees to really polish very well under the rexus edge as well as the posterior capsule. This is really not the ideal type of tip for me. Another thing I've noticed, obviously the systems are different. Continuous infusion is really set up differently on this machine, so I was kind of bumbling around a little bit. But it does have continuous infusion, which is excellent, and I do prefer using continuous infusion for all of my cases. And this is the standard sweep that I use. This is a Singer Coke sweeper. It's really nice and big, and it's got a nice angle to it. So I'm able to polish the lens epithelial cells on the left side and then the right side. And this is the single piece acrylic lens. It's going into the capsular bag rather easily. And then I go in with irrigation off, activate irrigation, disengage the haptics off the optic, getting underneath the lens, removing all the viscoelastic from within the bag, and then I'll remove the viscoelastic from the anterior chamber, and then I'll hydrate my incision. So again, this is my first time using the Bausch & Lomb Stellaris. What are my first impressions? So again, first they talk about chamber stability. This machine has tremendous chamber stability. I did not have any troubles with the chamber. And even though, with the Alcon system, you have those paddles that are compressing the bag, this is still with the pole system. I did not feel like I was losing anything using this system. The system is very capable. Did you see just now, as I was doing the IA, the tip of that metal IA piece came out through one of the side ports? Again, this disposable tip, not my favorite. So getting back, again, chamber stability, excellent. Didn't have any chamber collapse at all throughout this case. Number two, Phaco efficiency. Well, this was a soft lens, so it's really hard to really demonstrate the power of the Phaco technology. I'd have to use it in a denser lens. Unfortunately, this very first case was a soft lens, but I am looking forward to trying it on more dense lenses. I've heard that it does a pretty good job, but I'll know once I actually experience it myself. And then finally, when it comes to vacuum and grabbing pieces, wow, I really feel like this machine is far superior than a peristaltic system. I'm able to grab pieces without occlusion. And so you saw I was able to grab the lens pieces out of the bag. Sometimes when the lens is sticky, I have to use a chopper to hook the lens from the periphery and bring it out of the bag with my peristaltic system in the past. And I've built that into my technique, so it's really not an issue. But man, what a luxury when you're able to just grab the lens piece without occlusion. I mean, it's like magic. You're able to grab the piece even though you don't have occlusion at the tip. Again, because it's not a peristaltic system. Peristaltic system depends upon occlusion. With a Venturi system, you don't. And so that was the biggest wow in my experience, the ability to grab lens pieces without occlusion. It was so easy to grab the pieces. And then again, with high vacuum, since it's instant, those pieces emulsified so quickly. You saw the Phaco on this soft lens. Very efficient use. My only criticism is really that disposable IA tip. It was really terrible. I don't really recommend it. Again, other people might like it, but it's not for me. They do have a standard type of tip, a non-disposable tip, and so I look forward to trying that tip in future cases. But again, this is my first experience using the Bausch & Lomb Stellaris system. Overall, I think it's a great piece of technology. I think there's a lot of parity among all the manufacturers, at least here in the United States. And so it's a really great technology. And if you're interested in trying it, I think you'll be pleased with your experience using this machine. So I hope this was helpful to you, and I thank you for your attention.